When we think of Soviet dogs, we usually think of the large growly stray dogs with uncontrolled fur. But what if I were to tell you that the Soviets chose little lovable dogs to be the first living thing in space? And why did the Soviets choose a dog in the first place? Let's howl into this mystery a little deeper on this Soviet edition of Vintage Retrospekt. Hello, I'm Chad, your host for this First in Space and Soviet edition of Vintage Retrospekt. In order to answer the questions of the possibility of a human being surviving a launch into space in the late 1950s, both the Soviet Union and the United States needed a proof of concept of survivability. Well, that idea fell on animals, which had more or less human attributes in certain categories. While the US focused on training monkeys or chimpanzees for their space program, the Soviet Union chose dogs for their first suborbital flight tests. Dogs were preferred because dogs are well suited to endure longer periods of inactivity. More on the space dog qualifications later. The first ever flown dog was on a suborbital flight on a German V-2 rocket clone called the R-1 rocket. I do have an episode about that right up here, so go check it out after the video. This first flight flew the first unnamed test dogs to an altitude of around 100 kilometers or 62 miles. These flights flew from the years 1951 to 1956. Data was gathered from these flights to help move forward the mission parameters in launching dogs into space. Specifically, the candidate pool revolved around stray, mixed-breed dogs due to their reception of unfamiliar environments on a daily basis, and also how easy these dogs could be found. Who the heck was the brains behind this operation? Nikita Khrushchev. He also thought Sputnik was just a side project and that the R-7 rocket should just worry about delivering the warhead. However, after seeing Americans' reactions to Sputnik, he changed the tone and justification of spaceflight. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, he wanted to send off a mission that not only surpassed Sputnik 1, but also to send an invitation of a space race that was not emphasized on total war and destruction. On November 3rd of 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first ever dog named Laika into low Earth orbit on the Sputnik 2 launched by an R-7 rocket. Laika was known as Zuka, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, while the Americans called her Mutnik. To qualify as a space dog such as Laika, they were trained just like any cosmonauts or astronauts. Now, to qualify as a space dog such as Laika, they were trained just like any cosmonaut or astronaut was. They were subject to G-forces, sound levels of rocket launches, vibrations of controlled explosions, and of course, the diet of space food. The Soviets pretty much had it all covered. Well, so they thought. Unfortunately, Laika died around the 5 to 7 hour mark into the flight. And this was more or less due to stresses and overheating of the space capsule that the dog was in. In a later video, we will dig deeper on the K9 launch campaign, as there were many more dogs launched into space, such as Belka and Strelka, which were actually two survivors of a spaceflight, making them the first two near-human organisms to survive in space. Now, don't get me wrong, these dogs were not just test subjects. They were ample amounts of humanity in training these dogs. These dogs were cuddled right before they were ingressed into the space capsule. There were tearful moments and an element of human companionship with our lovable man's best friend. Not only this is a Soviet edition of Vintage Retrospekt, it also doubles as another episode in my new series called First in Space. As much of a bonus that this is, I hope you consider sharing this video so that people who want a more chronological series can also find this channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so that people who think dogs and spaceships are only in cartoons can learn that they were a real thing in the Cold War era space race. If you love modern space, I'm also the host of a brand new show over at Orbital Edge News. Go ahead and check us out. Again, I'm your host, Chad, and I will see you out on the launch pad.